Hello. Hello. Are we live? Tell me, can you hear me right now? I should be on this little microphone right here. Nice. So how is everybody doing today? What's up, Johnny? Hello, Chad. Chad says, yo. Doing great, says AJ. Christine just points out, Christine is our brand manager, by the way. She just pointed out it's hot. Yes, it is very hot in LA right now. It is 100 and something degrees. I can check the AccuWeather to get you an exact temperature, but it is hot. Earlier, I was like posting to Instagram, like a selfie, and I just looked like a ghoul because I was sweating from being in the shop most of the day. What's up? Now, your username, so I see a username that says Cracksmith4EJM1. I mean, you're saying what's up, so I'm saying what's up back, man. What's up? What's going on? I'm glad to have you here. I don't know who you are though with the Cracksmith, right? That name isn't super informative. Joe, that's funny, Joe. Just here on my regular BMX, pretending it's a Chimera, he says. Oh, nice. Okay, yes. Yes, I met a few people at the Long Beach ride. Now, are you the one who had the CYC on the aluminum frame? Nice. Okay, great. Great you're here, man. Great you're here. I think that's a great build, by the way. So the guy going by the username Cracksmith has a really cool CYC X1. It's a mid-drive conversion kit, and he put it on this like aluminum, I guess it's like a mountain bike frame. And he's doing like a single speed thing, just like ours. And it's fast. He has it geared for a higher top speed. I think his top speed like is 40-something miles an hour. Oh, that's right. It's okay. So it's an internal. It's in the rear hub. You've got an internal thing going on. Right. I remember that. Captain Calgary. Hello. Welcome to the United States, man. Canada, man. It's so tough shipping to Canada. Shipping rates are out of control. All over, actually. We tried to ship to Australia, and it's a real hassle. Real hassle. Man, I'm so glad I got a good number of people showing up to our little chat here in the shop. Oh, I know you say FPV stuff is a pain to get. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of stuff is a pain to get. Huh. Okay, so we got some interesting stuff showing up in the chat. Yeah, so we got questions here about like shipping times, like when are the bikes going out? Will there potentially be some bikes available in July after you shipped all the pre-orders, maybe, hopefully? Look, I'd love to get you bikes as soon as possible. I would love to have a good deal of inventory on top of whatever we order for this first run of bikes. I can't really promise that, though. So that depends on a lot of stuff that hasn't happened yet. So in the next few months, we'll know whether we can afford, basically, we can afford to order additional inventory, ordering the bikes and the parts, the frames, and all our Indiegogo orders. But our priority is, of course, the Indiegogo orders. And those, I got a question here. So AJ says, is it still going to be sometime next year to get our bikes? It'll definitely be next year. Whether it's going to be all the way till next summer, as we sort of promised we would get you your bikes by next summer, or it'll be a little earlier, that remains to be seen. Basically, when it comes to starting up a new production line, right? We have several different suppliers. They're shipping from all over the world. Some of them here in the United States, some of them here locally, some of them from Taiwan, some of them from Germany. When you have that many pieces of the puzzle and you're doing it for the first time, any little thing that goes wrong can delay several months. And so that's why instead of just saying, hey, we can get it to you in 5 or 6 months, which is how things look on paper, we're like, just plan on this summer. That way, if anything goes wrong, we've got enough padding, if that makes sense. Johnny asks, will there be any sort of covering for the controller to protect it from dirt and crud spitting up from the wheel? Give me 1 second. All right, so this is the ASI BAC 855 controller. For bikes of our size and weight, you can't get any better for a controller in terms of... you see this material here? This is potting. It's waterproof potting. And that makes this controller IP68 rated. It's very high. That's a very high rating against dirt and grime and water. So even though you're right that this is sort of right above the wheel, well, I mean, you can see it, right? It's right here. It's protected in the sense that any dirt or water or whatever that gets on it is not going to affect it. And it's just a nice aluminum. So on the prototype, whenever I'm riding it around, and I get something on here, I mean, I just wipe it off with a little, simple green and a rag, and it comes right off. This little part on the side, this little JST connection, I think was a big mistake. I think ASI shouldn't have used that connection because it's kind of delicate. What we're going to be doing is something that I'm picking up. I'm basically just copying what Grintech. So Grintech makes a controller called the Phase Runner. And I guess they ran out, their supplier, like something happened, and they couldn't make the Phase Runner for a while. So right now, if you go to Grintech's website, their Phase Runner is actually what they are calling a Franken Runner. And it is this controller, but they've done something clever, and we're just going to do the same thing, which is they do a little covering right here, and they provide additional potting. So all the JST connection and everything is completely potted. So when you get your controller, it's going to be about yay longer. That's going to be gray potting, or we might use black. I think black might look better. And there will be little quick connectors coming out of it that are waterproof when you connect them. They're little HIGO connectors, HIGO connectors, HIGO connectors. That's the standard in e-bikes. Makes for very easy, assembly and disassembly, and it'll provide all the extra protection around that area. I hope that answers your question, Johnny. Yeah. Okay, I've got all sorts of stuff here. So how about a chromoly version for a lower price? Any idea weight difference? Yes, I know exactly the weight difference. It's going to be around 5 to 6 pounds, depending on if we can go any thinner on these plates, because those plates actually add a good deal of weight when they're made of steel. Whether we can go thinner on them or sort of drill them out or whatever. But if you make a frame, a fork, and a handlebar out of steel rather than titanium, it's 5 pounds, 5 or 6 pounds. The amount of money it would save on like MSRP, $800, maybe $1,000. We'd have to see. Like I can't make any promises with that. Will we see a chromoly version further down the line? Probably. But as a first offering, I think this is the killer bike, man. There's nothing this light, this powerful. Titanium, totally rust-proof, right? Almost as strong as steel, like very close in terms of strength, but 60% of the weight. You can anodize it. When it's brushed like this, it's super easy to clean. It looks pretty. Like titanium's the way to go. So that's sort of like our flagship model. We will mess around with steel eventually, but it is further down the line. It's not coming super soon. Yeah. When do pre-orders close? Joe, pre-orders on Indiegogo close in 5 days, right? So super soon for the Indiegogo. There might be a small window between when the Indiegogo closes and when we place our order for frames. There might be a small window when we can take orders on the website, but the price will be a little higher. So just throwing that out there. I think if you want to get in at a good price, we've kept our Indiegogo prices as low as we could, you know. Oh, Christine points out I missed a question. Thank you, Christine. From Tom, how stable is your light bike at speed? 35 miles per hour is no problem. It is very stable. I don't have any problems at all. Because I'm the one who invented it and tested it, I went ahead and took it to much, much higher speeds. And it was stable up to a certain point. And then, of course, without any sort of shock absorption, without front shocks, without rear suspension, it's just there's too much. But it's much higher than 35. 35 is not a problem. Okay. Battery time if you sat on the throttle, right? How long would it last? Okay. It depends on if you sit on the throttle and you're just going straight away, right? No hills, you're just sort of flying. It actually will go pretty far. It'll go further than 8 miles. It'll go probably more like 10, simply because you don't eat up nearly as much power once you get going. What always will zap the battery is starting from a dead stop or hitting hills, because that's when it requires the most torque. In order to put out that much more torque, it has to pull a lot more power from the battery. So if you're not sitting on the throttle, but you're hitting hills, or you're starting from a dead stop, you're stop and go traffic, 8 miles I'd say maximum. I should note that's at 3,800 watts. If you turn down the power, you turn it down to 1,000 watts maximum, and you're willing to do a little bit of pedaling, on takeoff or whatever, you're going to get way further, up to 20 miles. It kind of depends on how you ride, right? Okay, Johnny, are the rear brake and controller motor cables snake through the frame tube, or are they zip tied alongside the exterior? They, on the current model, right? On the current model, you can see right here, that's the throttle wire. It's snaked inside the top tube. And on the alternate side, it's the same for the brake cable. We've done something pretty cool with the newest version, right? So you can see, throttle wire in, throttle wire out. Those holes, I did those myself, right? Those aren't, those are about as professional as you can get with the machinery I have here in this shop, and Nick has in his. But on the new frames, we've got this little bolt-in release, and it's more hidden. It's sort of underneath, like bottom part of the tube, and that allows you to put in and out the throttle cable super easily. The brake cable is going to go through the down tube on the new version. So there's going to be a little thing here on the side. You go in, and it actually goes through the bottom bracket, and it comes out right where the brake is. So you won't ever see the brake cable at all after it leaves, the handlebars, which I think is pretty slick. We did that for the front fork. Let's see if I can show you. Yeah, you can see right there, once the cable goes in, it goes through and doesn't come out until right there. And I really like that. I think that's slick. Oh, I like this question. Just curious why 24-inch wheels rather than 20-inch wheels. Okay, so this is a really good question. And actually, I don't know if you guys saw the little interview with Mike Feedy. He had asked me that question, and I don't know, I didn't give him a very good answer. I was nervous, and it was I don't know, it had been a long day. So he didn't put it in. But basically, I was trying to envision a vehicle that you could use to commute, actually go long distances, right? So that's one thing. 20-inch wheels are not the best for that, both in terms of, top speed, and just, it's a tiny bike. 20-inch wheels are a tiny bike, right? But the main thing is also just stability. So stability when you're going super fast, stability when you're, coming off curbs or whatever else at a much higher speed than you would on a 20-inch bike. I could have made my life a lot easier if I went with 26-inch wheels, just in terms of what's on the market, in terms of like supply. I could get a hold of 26-inch wheels that are pre-built rather than having to build them ourselves. But when you go up to 26, suddenly the bike is a little bit too big and cumbersome to fit in a hatchback or take on trains and public transit, and it doesn't quite have the BMX feel. And that was another goal we had. So 24 inches is sort of a compromise between, maneuverability, stability, and appropriate size for a commuter bike, if that makes sense. Joe asks, have any of the other e-bike companies reached out to buy your bike or buy your idea, or shown support, or even throw some hate towards Chimera? So no one has offered to buy the technology yet, or license the technology yet, although we are open to that, at least the licensing. But we have had both hate and love. So we do have some industry folks who follow, our social media, who DM us like, oh, it's such a cool idea, and they ask us questions and stuff. And that's like, it's so nice to have that support from the industry. Then we also have some industry folks who have like, we've heard of them talking some smack, and every now and then they'll actually comment like on a post, and I don't know, say some mean things. That's always surprising. Like, I don't know, we haven't said anything bad or done anything bad to industry folks, but I think it's much more support than hate. I think we get way more support from the industry so far than hate. Okay, so the question is, it's 52 volts times 90 amps equals 4,680 watts to the motor. If only it were that simple. It's not. So you have to account for voltage sag, right, which is substantial on any battery pack that's even close to this size. Even a bigger battery pack is still going to have a substantial amount of voltage sag when you're pulling that much current all at once, right? So there's no way you'll get that amount of wattage. And then you also have to account for the effect of field weakening. So field weakening is a process that we use on the controller. I know some of you are like tuning out right now. Some of you who just want a fast bike, you don't know about the tech. You're like, I don't know what he's talking about. So just hold off. I won't do this for very long. But field weakening is a process whereby you take the total current that you have available to you, and you apportion some of it to send to the back EMF of the motor to change the field by which it is rotating. And in so doing, you can create a weaker field so that the motor can spin faster, can hit a higher top speed without needing to change your overall voltage. So that's how we can go from 0 to 35 with a great deal of torque. But that also means the total current that is usable at any given moment is closer to like 71 amps. And then when you account for voltage sag and all that, now we're closer to 3,800 watts max. Okay. So hopefully that answers the question. So Johnny asks, will the gear that transfers the torque out to the rear wheel be 16 or 17T on the bike? Will it vary between Founders Editions versus standard, or will it be a part upgrade sold separately? So I think we should do the 17T stock. And honestly, I think I'll just include the 16T for anybody who bought a Founders Edition. I'm just going to throw that in, right? You'll get both. And for everybody else, it'll be a pretty affordable part upgrade if you want to do that, right? The 17T versus 16T, right? It really kind of depends on where you live. Johnny, I know he's in New York City. I've ridden the bike around New York City. I don't think you need the 16T. Like the bike has a ton of torque with the 17T, and you get the top speed of 35 miles per hour plus. But if you're in San Francisco and you need to climb hills, like really, really, really steep hills, you need the 16T on the side of the bike. Right, so this is part of the pulley system that's on the side of the bike. If anybody's wondering, you can ask some follow-up questions. So that'll give you 6% more torque, and it'll lower your top speed a little bit. And you might actually consider also changing out the rear cog from a 16-tooth to a 17-tooth. That will make an overall system that only has like a top speed of maybe 32 miles per hour tops, but it'll just climb walls, right? So that way you can climb those San Francisco hills while other e-bikes are dying. You can actually do it. Oh, nice. Okay, so I just saw a really funny comment. Okay, Joe asks for the Founders Edition finish option. When it says pink anodized, what does that mean exactly? The whole frame could be pink? The whole frame could be pink. The whole frame, fork, and handlebars could be pink if you so desire it. Anodization. So it turns out, like, I don't know if you guys have ever watched a video of anodizing aluminum. It's a headache. It's a total headache. It's a huge process. I would never want to do it. I don't want to get anywhere near that. Anodizing titanium, so easy. So easy. It's a chemical process. And I guess it was about 5 or 6 years ago. It used to be a more toxic chemical process, but now the stuff that they've got is like, you can do it in a shop like this and it's reasonably safe. Just get a little ventilation, wear a mask and you're fine. And it doesn't take very long, in an hour, you can have the whole frame anodized within a whole spectrum. So I encourage you to look up online, just right now, Google titanium anodizing colors. And you'll see that the colors that you can do are dependent on the voltage that you supply, right, when you're doing the anodizing process. And it's easy. It's easy. So yes, we can do pink. We can do blue. We could actually do a bunch of other colors, but I felt like we already didn't have time to like provide samples and pictures. So I just sort of threw those two colors because those are the ones that I think are the coolest. But okay. Someone going by the name of Amo Irwin says, rumor has it that you developed a high drive when you hit your head on the toilet. Can you confirm or deny? This is a Back to the Future reference. Yes, that happened. I am the Doc from Back to the Future. What gauge spoke on the wheel? I love this question. So tomorrow, I'm going to be posting about our wheels. So we finally got these in, right? And I say these as if the wheels themselves came in, but they didn't. So I'm building the wheels. This is a 14-gram spoke. So that means it's double butted. So it's thicker here and thicker here than it is in the center. So we use 14-gram spokes, right? And this, in fact, is our hub. So if you look in there, you can see that's our logo. And there you go. We do that, by the way. So if you look online, and I can actually send a calculator that I like a lot. Here, I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm going to put it in the comments. There you go. Yeah. So for anybody who ever wants to know about wheels, their strength and how they work or whatever, use that calculator. It's pretty dope. What you'll find out is that if you use the straight gauge spokes that are common on BMX bikes, so 13-gram, just straight gauge spokes, you get slightly more stiffness in this direction. Slightly more. But you get less strength overall in this direction, like substantially less strength. So if you land funny, it's much easier to bend over for the wheel to fold over with those spokes than with the double butted spokes. And so that's why I like to go that direction. It's a less stiff wheel, so it's a little more flex, but that flex provides extra strength. And we've had great luck. Like, you've seen the videos of us and other BMX riders like getting on these bikes and jumping them and everything else, and no one ever complains about the way it lands. It's a nice, solid, but slightly flexy landing that I think is superior. Okay. Johnny Prime says, do standard 3/8 -14 millimeter pegs fit on the axles? Yes, they do. So here's our new hub, and this is a 10 millimeter. So it uses a 10 millimeter bolt. That's pretty standard for the kinds of hubs that we use, but 10 millimeters is very, very, very close to 3/8. So imperial to metric, doesn't matter. You can get a peg that's made for a 3/8, or you can get a peg that's made for a 10 millimeter. Either one will work with our hubs. I say our hubs, plural, because this standard is also used on our front hubs. And I'm going to take this opportunity, even though I know you didn't quite ask, to hype a decision that we made on our front hubs. So when you take a front hub and you add a disc brake mount, that has to scoot in the flanges, right? So it makes for a wheel that is skinnier in terms of like where the spokes are at. That's a weaker wheel. So what we did is we adopted the mountain bike standard. This has never happened in BMX as far as I know. We adopted the mountain bike standard of going from a 100 millimeter front fork to a 110 millimeter front fork with a disc mount that is scooted over a little bit. And that uses hubs that are either 20 millimeter through axle or 15 millimeter through axle. But our forks do not use a through axle. Our forks are regular bolt-on axles, right? That means you just use a bolt, just like you do on the Zoos or other BMX bikes. We provide a conversion axle that slides into any 20 millimeter hub, or we have a conversion for a 15 millimeter hub so that you can use the same 10 millimeter bolts that you use on the rear, front and rear, so that you can have pegs on a front wheel that is substantially stronger than other BMX wheels or wheels with a disc brake mount. So it'll be substantially stronger than the other wheels that you're used to on other e-bikes of like the same size. Is that like too much information? This is me nerding out, right? Joe asks, is there a warranty on all products? Yes. So we're going to provide a year warranty on normal wear and tear for everything on the bike. The frame is, you're not going to mess up the frame. The frame, the forks, the handlebars, they're going to hold up great. It's depending on how hard you ride, you might mess up something, but we've got you for a year. Feel free to ask follow-up questions about that. I don't know. Johnny says, I've never used vinyl tubes before. Are they just a stronger and lighter option than rubber and other materials? Yeah, let me grab a vinyl tube for you. So this is the brand that we'll be putting on the Founders Edition. They're Tubalitos, right? Here's one that's been used before. They use this bright orange color, I guess, to differentiate themselves. It's not as if this material has to be orange, but they like to use it. These are 1/3 the weight of rubber tires, but they are at least as strong, and apparently they're a little more resistant to punctures. I haven't found them to be any more or less resistant to punctures than regular rubber tires, but I have found them to be substantially lighter. Like it is noticeable. It is noticeable. Are you supplying the 18650 or 21700 cell in your battery? I'm not sure. So we use 21700 cells. The cells that we use are P40 we use equals. There we go. So I can send you that. So if you feel like looking those up, they are a very powerful cell. Most EV fanatics who build their own, bikes and other sorts of electric vehicles, that's sort of the gold standard right now, because those cells, they hold their energy dense. Each cell is a 4.2 Ah cell. Just a single cell is 4.2 Ah, but they're really high C. That's the name of being able to put out a great deal of current all at once. They can do 45 amps, 45 amps maximum, because we use 2 of them in parallel, 14 S2P, so 14 of them in series, 2 of them in parallel as you go through the series. We can do 90 amps. So if you're wondering how we get 90 amps out of such a small battery, well, that's how we do it. Hopefully I haven't dissuaded anybody from asking questions by being far too technical in my answers. You can feel free to follow up. Okay, Johnny, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't love the chain tensioner solution that I've been using on the prototypes. We've come up with a better solution for the final version. I can show you. Give me 1 second. All right. Are made by a company called Alienation. They do BMX products. And if you look from this side, it just looks like a washer. Right? But if you look on the other side, they have this sort of oval shape, so that when you put this into the dropout, this extra little amount here works by, prohibiting the wheel from sliding forward by that particular amount. And I love this idea. I think it's a great idea. We are going to be making something kind of similar sort of philosophy, but it's more like a bar. Since we have such long dropouts, we want you to be able to adjust to do freestyle tricks, or if you're more in like race mode, you're trying to go really fast and you're trying to keep the nose down, we want to provide more like a bar that has several stops along the way, and they slide into the dropouts and stop you where you need to stop. So as long as you're using the 16T cog that comes with the bike, you can sort of choose where you want to be, if that makes sense. Because I don't know if y'all have ever messed with these chain tensioners. They work okay, but with the amount of torque that we put on the wheel, like at least once a week, I got to go back and like adjust it a little bit, because it just like pulls that bolt slowly forward. Joe asks that this might be a wild question, but is there a possibility to put an alternator on the bike to keep recharging the battery while riding? Joe, it's not only possible, yeah, you could totally do that. So this is our transmission, right? And I actually left it open so you can see the inside of the little clutch. But on this side, so there is a clutch. So watch, when I turn it this direction, it spins everything, but then nothing, right? And that's why, so if you're pedaling, right, you're turning the sprocket, but you're not turning the pulley on the side, right? You're not putting energy back into the motor. But if you really want to, we can give you the part so that, you just pull this off. It's just pressure fit, right? So you can pull it right off. And you can put on a pulley that doesn't have the little clutch mechanism. And then when you pedal, you can recharge the motor if you're into that sort of thing. You could also switch the rear hub out to one that is fixed. You're basically riding a fixie, right? And it won't do that because there's a clutch here. It won't be a proper fixie bike, but it will recharge the battery when you're going down hills and stuff. But I'm just going to note, I've tried it. It's terribly uncomfortable. It is not a fun ride at all. I don't think you're going to like it, but it is possible. So if you if you really want to experiment with it, it's totally doable. Totally doable. Will you be shipping to the UK? Oh man, I really don't think so. I really don't think so. Do you see a lot of bikes that are this like e-bikes that are this powerful in the UK? Because I mean, they're illegal there, and as I understand it, in these European countries, they actually enforce their e-bike laws. They're pretty strict about it, and this bike is the sort of thing that would get caught up at customs. Ultimately, I mean, our approach when people ask us this question, will you ship to Australia? Will you ship to, Canada? Will you ship to the UK? Our approach has been like, we will do everything we can to get you the bike. And, when we work through DHL, they're sort of experts at making sure everything goes through customs. But if it gets caught up at customs, there's nothing we can do. Right. And that's why, like, when you ask about the UK, I'm like, you sure you want to take that gamble? Because I'm pretty sure the UK is really strict on what sort of e-bike is and is not allowed into the country. Oh, Johnny says, I want to hear the motor run and then the freewheel, angry nest of murder hornets. Okay. There's the murder hornets. Oh, Emil asks a great question, and it's a really depressing answer, Emil. So he says, does the $7,500 EV credit apply to Chimera? No. As I understand it, those EV credits were originally slated so that you could apply them to e-bikes and other sorts of electric vehicles. And somewhere along the way in Congress, that got gutted, and it only applies to new cars. Now, maybe something changed last minute and I didn't hear about it, but as I understand it, no, they're just providing EV credits for electric cars and not for electric bikes, which is, I don't know, like, why? Oh, Christine's pointing out that someone asked if this is a custom-made motor. Yes, it is. We designed it. So this is the very first one that we designed. I had to do a little trim here to make it fit properly. It was the first one that we had done, and we were a few millimeters off on the, total circumference. But it works a lot better than the other sort of off-the-shelf motors that we had been working with. So this is a little bit of just like show and tell. This motor was the first one. This is the one I actually originally designed the high drive around. I was very excited about it. This is an outrunner motor, right? And it's an outrunner because you can see, right, how the outside is spinning like this. That's because the magnets are on the outside, right? The stator is on the inside. So the coils are on the inside. The magnets are on the outside. Outrunners are a little more affordable, actually typically substantially more affordable than inrunners. And it's really powerful. This was like an 8,000 watt motor or something crazy. But it was very noisy, very, very noisy. I'll actually put up a video of it. It's just insanely loud. And, it's open to the elements. So water, dirt, dust, all that stuff could get in there. And it was also really hard to tune. Like, I never got it quite functioning properly. And that's when we switched to an in-runner design. This is the Astro motor. You've probably heard me talking about it in other, videos that I've posted. It's from a company here in California, Astro Motors. And this is actually one of the first ones that they made of this model, and they made it for us to a specific, thickness and with these mounts and everything that we had designed. Great motor, just a killer motor. It uses cobalt magnets, really highly efficient. It's half a pound lighter than our motor, but the Cobalt heats up really, really quickly. And it's very finicky. So it's a very twitchy motor. It's precisely because it heats up so quickly, the LS and the RS, the resistance and the inductance sort of change. At least the controller sees it that way as it heats up. And so it's hard for the controller to like match it. And so we switched. We designed our own. It is a 10 slot, 12, right? 12 pole. Wait, 10 pole, 12 slot. Yeah. Motor using neodymium magnets. And it's been great. It's been great. We don't have any problems with overheating. We were able to get it to an even lower kV so that the gear assembly we use is, small and efficient. We don't have to use a very big reduction. It's been great. And we're really proud of it. IP53 rated. So totally resistant against splashes, dust. If it's raining, you're fine. Hall censored, great motor. We get them, we manufacture them ourselves. Okay. If one would want distance only, what would you recommend? Reed gear and bigger battery? So you just want to get a really, really long distance? Yeah, bigger battery, lower power. Just turn on the power, get a huge battery. People are obsessed with, and I don't want to knock anybody who wants to go really long distances. Cool. I mean, awesome, but I always wonder, it's just wait, you want to go really, really long distances on a BMX bike? Cool. We'll make you a bike. I'd love to see it. I guess when I'm on it, it's such an intense experience. I'm I don't know if I want to do this for, 30, 40, whatever miles. Oh yeah, Brandon. Yeah, you could sell worldwide and through international distribution, but you would definitely need to market the bike as for off-road use only, at least in your legalities. Yeah. How many countries will actually buy that, and allow it, especially if you ship it to a city? It's you're shipping it to London and it's for off-road use only. But I'm game for it. It's just at this point, we're a small startup company sort of handling all of that red tape stuff. Are those 2.5-inch hookworm slick style or something different coming on the bikes? So what we're going to be using, these exact tires, they have some other brands branding right now, but this is the tread. They're 2.3 inches wide. And they are a wire bead, which I'm not in love with. I prefer folding tires, but there's just not a lot of options on the market. Whether, it's aftermarket or stuff that we can do sort of OEM. That's what we can get a hold of. But I do like the tires. They've been holding up really well. I think they look cool. Yeah. Oh, Christine, our brand director has asked a question knowing what the answer is, but I think she wants me to point out, she asks, how long has the motor been running for? This motor has been running for a little over a year and has had no problems. The Astro motor, that's been running for 2 years without problems. Speaking of heat, asks Emil, how will the bike perform differently in different climates? The motor that we have made, I think, is going to perform really well, at least in hot climates like LA. So yesterday, 98, 99 degrees, it was hot, man. It was hot. And I was running at full throttle for about 6 miles. And the motor did heat up, but it never really got close to the threshold where we needed to shut it down thermally, which happens automatically. So you don't have to stress that. If it gets close to the danger point, the controller shuts it off, right? So you don't have to worry about hurting the motor, but you might have to worry, if you heat it up enough that it'll shut down, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think in hot climates, it's actually a pretty impressive motor. Colder climates, We haven't tested it yet, but it would have to be really, really cold to, affect the performance of the bike. So how is it going to perform in a Detroit winter? I don't know, but I also don't know why you would want to be on a 3,800 watt BMX in the middle of a Detroit winter. So Chad asks, did you experiment with battery placement, top tube versus down tube? Yes. And in terms of like how it felt weight-wise, there was not a huge difference between top tube or down tube, but there was a huge difference when you land off of a jump in terms of how the battery was affected by that. When it's on the down tube, right, that rigid surface, and you hit a jump, it kind of like it's pushing the battery against that point. Whereas when it's mounted on the top, the underside of the tube, when you land, it has that little bit of flex that it needs to keep the battery, I think, safer overall against that sort of shock. And that's how we've gone about sort of designing. Nick Nieminen did a great job on this, designing the little points. There's these thick rubber points here, and when they connect, they do allow just the slightest bit of flex to absorb that shock. And that's not something we could do as easily. I mean, maybe we could figure out a way to do it, but it's not something we could do as easily if it were mounted on the down tube. How is the app development coming along? I'm curious what sort of data it displays. Basics like odometer and speed versus compiled data like average speed, performance at different watt settings, etc. Yeah. So the app development is pretty much where it was at when I posted that screenshot of our Figma file. That's the program that app developers use for all the front end stuff, how it's going to look, how it's going to interact, how the pages come in and out. And right now we've got it, it's very basic. It shows temperature, it shows battery life. You can adjust the wattage setting, the throttle responsiveness, top speed. The next step is tying it to GPS data. And we want to make sure we do it right so you can get a pretty good feel for, average speed, top speed. I think it's going to be much more reliable, at least when it comes to GPS stuff, in terms of an odometer. I've messed with a lot of different GPS apps, and I don't know about y'all, I've had really bad luck in terms of it being accurate for, top speed and average speed and stuff. It's kind of meh, but it is pretty accurate in terms of, distance traveled. So I feel very confident that we can do that with the app. We've got quite a while, before we have to finish that up. So I'm feeling good about it because we're already very far along in terms of app development. Can you add an hour meter on the motor? Emil asks. I don't know what does that mean? What's an hour meter? Oh, was there a metal bracket to connect the battery to the frame, or was it always a strap? So let's see. Okay. So what happened was I was focused when I was developing the system, right, on getting the motor and the clutch and the transmission and everything like fine-tuned, lightweight, modular, all the stuff that I'm very proud of on the bike. And I always just kept saying like, okay, I'll get to the battery, right? Like the battery itself that we make is a very high performance battery. I think it'll be the highest performance battery on the market that's that size. There's no other battery that size that can do 90 amps of current, as far as I know. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. But in terms of how it mounts on the bike, it's just been strapped on for quite a while. It's only recently that Nick Nieminen, our engineer that I've been working with from the beginning, came up with these sleek titanium cones that will be welded on to the frame, welded on in those locations for the aluminum encased battery to click onto, right? So it sort of slides on there, and then you have a choice whether to strap, right, around. So it goes like this and comes through and can strap on if you want to sort of have a quick on and off. Or these are threaded and you can bolt them on from underneath. That's probably how I would do it. Like I pretty much never take the battery off. So, you know, when we get the final version, like the bike that I ride, I'll probably be bolting them on. But I know like Johnny, like he's, we've had discussions on Instagram and stuff. And he said he's real keen on the fact that you can like, you know, pop those straps off and just swap batteries so that, you know, if you're trying to go long distances, maybe you can just have another battery in your bag. You can swap them out. Oh, Johnny asks, lots of customizations. Do you have any concerns over battery being damaged if people are consistently running at 3,800 watts in full blast? No, I don't. Let me show you. This old thing, you can see it's pretty haggard. I used it on the, when we first got the case for our new battery, you know, I stuck this in. This is 3 years old. I made this 3 years ago. Has no BMS at all. Very dangerous battery, by the way. There's no fuse, there's no BMS. It's just a bunch of batteries sort of spot welded together. But it's the Molicel P42A, you know, the ones that we use. This is still a functional battery, and it still has a lot of charge left. Like it's not that saggy of a battery. You can still go close to the same amount of miles. And the only thing you really need to do, like, it's not the discharge. It's not hitting it at 3,800 watts and going fast that really kills the battery. What will kill the battery is if you constantly drain it all the way to zero, right? That will kill it. And that's something that I don't usually do, right? So I right around 40%, you know, I'm like, meh. Oh, I've got, okay, a bunch of great comments here. Okay. An hour meter would work similar to a boat, just calculating total runtime to know how long it has been running. Oh, huh. I never considered that. Huh. I think the answer is no, just because we're so close to production and it's just like we're already, you know, sort of like juggling a lot of really custom, super cool things on the bike. So like adding an hour meter, I think I'm going to say just no to that, at least for this first run. But that's a cool idea. I want to see like how much would that cost, and like how much weight would that add, and how difficult would it be? If it's super simple and it doesn't really add any extra weight, next run maybe we'll do that. Okay. Does it wheelie good? Can you do an infinite manual? Says Chad. Yes. You can manual this bike for infinity. Yeah, you can totally manual it. Mike Feedy. So, you know, the other day when we went out for the bike ride. You know, he hasn't posted the footage yet. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I don't know. He said it turned out kind of grainy because it was at night. But he got on the bike and he was like, I wonder if I can 180 it. He immediately did a 180 it. Immediately did a 180, and then he just started manualing. And it was like, you know, it's a BMX bike with BMX geometry. It doesn't weigh much more than other BMXs. So yeah, man, you can manual it, you can wheelie it. Emil asks, could it be added in the app? Huh. There wouldn't be a good way to do it because the app doesn't know which battery you've connected. It only knows that there is a battery connected. Do you know what I mean? So it could tell you that you've been running one battery or another for a certain amount of time. That it could do. But can it tell you that you've been running that particular battery for a certain amount of time? No, we would need what you're talking about. We would need a little hour meter like on the battery. How much does an extra battery cost? So on Indiegogo right now, we're charging $420 for an extra battery. It's as an add-on, you know. So when you pre-order a bike, you can get an extra battery for $420, which is a good deal. It might be too good of a deal. Like, it's actually pretty expensive for us to make the batteries. They're pricey. So grab one now. Now's your chance. Oh, an hour meter for the motor, not the battery. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the battery. Yes. Yes. Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we could do that, as Christine points out. If it's for the motor, we could do that. An extra battery is available, but doesn't show up on the upfront listing. Yeah. Oh, Johnny, I can see you already want to customize the bike that you've purchased. Are the two chain lengths and widths common sizes if someone wanted to swap them to gold color, etc.? Yes. So on the bike right now, these are called half-link chains, by the way. I like the half-length. We'll probably stick with this, but you don't have to do that, right? So the way you use a half-length in order to dial in, you know, the rear end of the bike. If you only want to go by a half a link, you can do that because these are all half links. But the way we set up the production model of the bike, it uses an even number of lengths. So you can use just a regular bicycle chain as long as it is 1/8 inch thick in size. So it's the thicker chain. But there's plenty of those out there. Like, any BMX chain will work. KMC makes a really nice lightweight chain that has the hollow pins and the drilled out plates, and it comes in a pretty cool gold color, titanium oxidized gold. Like, we've used those on the bikes and it looks really cool. It's really eye-catching. Yeah. Yeah, Johnny, like, we had originally thought about putting the KMC on there with the, you know, the hollow pins and the drilled out plates. They wear out a little faster. You know, they do last a good amount of time, but ultimately they do wear out a little faster. So I felt it best to go ahead and switch to the little heavier duty chain for the production model. I don't want people having to swap out chains, you know, too often. Oh, thanks. Yeah, you know, we've tried a bunch of different chains on the bike. I think the half link just looks kind of brutal, you know. Yeah, so I like it. I like it. What's your favorite gift cause poison? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Oh man. All right, what else y'all got? What other questions might you have about this strange bike that we have built and that we are going to be building? We're going to be going into production on these things. Ah, good. Okay, good question. Potted. So earlier I mentioned that this gray stuff is potting. Battery fires are a danger with electric bikes. Battery fires are a danger. And I think they're of particular danger if you're on a bike that you're going to be jumping. Right? So we want to make our batteries safe. One of the ways to make it safe, so it'll be more shock absorbing, right? It'll be harder for it to vent if it catches on fire, harder for it to, you know, sort of expand, is inside of the case, right? So we make the case bigger than the battery cell, the battery pack itself, and we pour this stuff inside as we suspend the battery pack so that there's an equal amount of room on all sides of the encasement. and that goo gets sort of down in there and, works its way inside the cells and whatever, and it holds the battery in place, and it provides an extra layer of protection and also an incredible amount of waterproofing, right? So the pack would be more resistant against shock, better in terms of like if something ever makes it catch on fire, it's way safer, and virtually waterproof. So the potting is cool. One thing I'm curious about though, and this is Powerful Lithium Systems. So I had a nice long conversation with them. They made a battery for us, and they were saying that actually we should consider the fireproof foam padding because it's more shock absorbing than the potting. Basically, we're going to try both, and we're going to be purposely stabbing these things so they set on fire. I got a really good tip on how to do that safely or reasonably safely. So, in about a month or two, look out for some videos of us setting batteries on fire on purpose. And whichever provides the most protection, the foam padding or the potting, I think it'll probably be the potting, that's what we're going to use. Hopefully that answers your question about what potting is. Thomas, how much will it cost? So check out the Indiegogo. I can give you a link. Of course, I will say it out loud here in just a second, but just so you have the link. On Indiegogo right now, we are selling what we're calling the standard edition of the bike for $4,200. And if you're local, so if you're anywhere in California and you don't mind coming to Los Angeles, you can just choose local pickup, right? So it's no cost for shipping. Otherwise, it's $180 for shipping. We also have the Founders Edition of the bike, and it gives you some pretty sweet titanium cranks, the Tubolito tubes, all titanium bolts all around, some other aftermarket parts, a faster charger, some goodies. It's up to $5,300. Brandon, so when you hit the brakes, does the motor shut off automatically? Nope. It's throttle only. So you have to push down the throttle to make the motor spin. So if you want the motor to shut off, just don't throttle it. By the way, I saw something really interesting. So I guess the founder of Zeus, his name escapes me, and I apologize for that, but I saw he had posted something about his own Zeus bikes, and it was really cool. He was explaining how he has his Zeus set up, and it's exactly the same. He said he cut those damn brake sensor things, the brake cutoff sensors. He said it's just more wiring, and it doesn't really serve a good purpose, so he cuts them off. And he said he did the same for the pedal assist. There's no pedal assistance. He says he just either throttles it or pedals it. And I'm like, yes, exactly. That's how this is set up. That's the kind of ride experience that we want to offer. You pedal it like a bicycle or you throttle it like a motorcycle. Those are your options. The brake cutoff comes in more handy when you're using pedal assist, because when you're using pedal assist, even when you stop pedaling, like there's a lag between when the motor shuts off. So you need that like brake sensor. Okay. What is clutched on the rear wheel non-drive side? You were talking about it earlier. So right here, right? Encased here. Let me see. I can actually take this off. So you see this area right here of the bike? That's part of the frame, right? It's a big cylinder up here, and it is above. This is the bottom bracket of the bike. You might know, bottom bracket. So we're calling this the upper bracket, and it's a new frame component. It's actually part of our patent, the patent that we have submitted and paid a fortune in attorney fees. But the upper bracket houses our transmission. So right now, so that's our transmission. This is the side of it. I've got it opened up so you can see the inner workings. That's clutched, right? So when you spin it in one direction, right, when the motor's spinning this sprocket to turn the back wheel, it doesn't turn what we're calling the clutch, right? So that's why the pedals don't move, the cranks don't move when you're throttling, right? Now, when you pedal, right, so you turn, so now this little, it's called a sprag clutch. You can see it inside there, right? It doesn't kick in when you're going one direction. It kicks in instantly when you're going the other. So now that you're turning the drivetrain, right, when you do that, notice the pulley doesn't move, and that's because there's a clutch inside there, right? So when the motor's spinning, this clutch disengages, it doesn't spin the cranks. When you spin the cranks, this clutch disengages, it doesn't spin the motor. Does that make sense? Brandon says, high drive, baby. Yeah, that's the high drive system. And it has, I think, several advantages over mid-drive systems and hub drive systems. We can discuss that if you like, if you're curious. But what I just showed you is actually, I think, pretty cool. It's part of why the bike is very easy to pedal. There's not a lot of mechanical stuff in the way of just pedaling your bicycle. Unlike, the mid-drive, it's that whole system sort of replaces your bottom bracket, and it's a little bit more of a headache to make it work that way. Yes, Chad, good eye. Yes. So up here, that's just the transmission. The motor sits below, and you'll notice the motor is big. One of the advantages of the high drive system is because of the way we run the drivetrain, we don't need that large of a transmission. So it's a pretty small transmission. It doesn't weigh that much. This is 2.2 pounds, all in, right? That's our transmission. And that allows us to use like a much bigger motor. So that's why we have such a high power to weight ratio. We don't need the big gears that other like mid-drives require for the much larger reductions that they use. So we have room for the bigger motor. Luke, I'm glad you're here, man. I'm stoked to make you a bike. I'm stoked to make everybody a bike, of course. Christine says, please explain potting for those who don't know. So potting is a process. Luke could actually speak to this better than me. But potting is that process I was talking about earlier, right? So, this stuff right here, this sort of rubbery compound gets poured into the battery casing while the battery pack itself is sort of suspended so that there is room around all edges of the battery. And that goop fills up all the pockets of air inside the battery case, hardens to a degree, right? It's still a little bit spongy for shock absorption. And by doing that, you create a battery that is safer against, heat expansion and fire, much, much more water resistant, right? And shock absorbing, right? So that's the potting process. And right now, I feel like that's sort of the gold standard of high quality batteries is potted and encased batteries. We went with an aluminum encasing. And as I understand it, that's pretty rare. Most batteries this size are encased in plastic. Yeah. Johnny asks if the horns, he's referring to the handlebars, are long enough for the longer grips, or will they be standard sized grips? So they will be 130 millimeter grips, about yay long, right? So not the longer grips that you use on a BMX bike. That's because these handlebars are 28.25 in width, inches, 28.25 inches. So those aren't super wide handlebars. They're not super narrow. They're kind of in between. We did that, and hopefully this won't get me in trouble with our insurance agent, but we did that so you can lane split pretty easily while still having the right amount of control. We found that around 28 inches is the sweet spot for still having a reasonably wide grip, but being able to get in between cars in traffic. See, Luke is chiming in here with, of course, a wealth of expert information. Vibration and chafing resistance and corrosion resistance. Yes, I forgot that. Lets packs tolerate extreme shock repeatedly without breaking. Yeah. Yeah, super cool engineering, says Brendan. Thank you. Thank you, man. This is 3 years of work, right? So thank you. I appreciate that. Since the bike is so light, it gives you the absolute best of both worlds, authentic manual power, something very easily to pedal on your own, and great electric power. Yeah, there are so many bikes on the market that offer pedal assistance, and they're great at it. Like there's so many great mid-drive motors that are like honestly way better than anything I could design at like doing pedal assistance. They are super precise. They're great pedal assisted motors. We wanted to go a different direction. For me personally, I don't want a bike that assists my pedaling. I have 2 legs. I can use them. I can pedal. I want a bike that when I hit that throttle, it turns into a motorcycle. That's what I wanted. So that's what we designed. And there's not really anybody else doing that out there. Like any kind of bike that has this kind of throttle power, it's not lightweight enough and not easy enough to pedal on your own. It really is like more like a moped. And ours isn't. Ours is a bicycle and it's a motorcycle. It's those 2 things. Yeah. I'm glad y'all are into it. It is a niche. It's a niche, right? This bike isn't for everybody, but it fills a niche that I think is important to fill. And it's good that we have some dedicated enthusiasts like you, stoked on the bike. How many miles would you guess are on each one of the prototypes at this point? Oh man. There's gotta be 1,000 on this one, and it's only a year old. I say that because I ride it every day, and then of course I'm like giving it to other people to ride. The original prototype, which actually has the nicer frame, right? I think the frame's nicer. We've reverted back. We're working with that frame manufacturer because that frame is it's great. That is over 2 years old now. Man, it's at least double. It's at least double. We've put so many miles on these things. So many miles. And I think the most miles that were put on the bike is in the first 6 months. It was during the pandemic. And this is where I'm talking about the height of the pandemic when there was no vaccine yet, and here in LA, no one was out at night and stuff. And I was going out late at night and testing the bike up and down the streets of Koreatown. And I had 3 batteries with me. So every time I juiced a battery, every time it was dead, I'd swap it out. Right. And just kept riding up and down, changing the settings, experimenting with it. I don't know how many miles that wound up making, but it was every single night for 6 months. And I kept redesigning as I was going along. So that's where a lot of those miles come from. All right. What other questions y'all have? I don't want to keep you too long. I know there's actually only 14 of you here. So are there any other questions? I got a couple things I wanted to sort of throw out there in case you're interested, but any other questions for me while I'm sitting in here sweating in my shop? All right. So you're welcome, Johnny. There's 2 things I wanted to point out, and give me 1 second. All right. So because I've had this question a couple times, I went ahead and throw it out there. There's a couple of people who have asked, they're thinking about buying the bike, but it's a high price point, and they're like, okay, this thing better last, right? If something breaks down on it, how much is it going to cost to repair it? Right? Now, of course, we've got you for the first year. That's part of the warranty. But I wanted to go ahead and throw out there that even though the bike is at a high price point, I think it's actually much cheaper to repair. So the primary wear items, the things that are gonna, you'll probably need to replace at some point, are the belt. It's a GT3 belt, and there's the little sprag clutch, right? These guys right here, that go inside the clutch that we manufacture, right? Those two things are what you might need to replace at some point. Now, I thought that they would wear out much faster than they have. I wanted to go grab this out of the shelves in here because this is the first belt we ever used, and we were running it for like a year, and it's still great. So I actually don't know when you'll need to replace it, but when you do, these can be pulled off the shelf. There are several suppliers here in the United States that will sell you a GT3 belt, 12 millimeters wide, 325 millimeters in length. You can get this, and you can get it for about $20 to $40, depending on the supplier. You can get it for $20 from us. And same for the little sprag clutch. You can get them from VXB Bearings here in California. You can get these, right? So unlike other e-bikes, when they break down, they're difficult to repair and they're usually expensive to repair. I feel like our system is much simpler, just doesn't have as many moving parts, and the moving parts that you might need to replace are much cheaper and easier to get a hold of. I'm proud of that, and I just wanted to throw it out there because we've had a few of those questions online, and I thought maybe they'd show up here, but I was, sorry to throw that out. All right. I don't know if that was interesting to you at all, but Christine calls it a sweatshop. It's not a sweatshop. It's a shop that I am sweating in. That's a totally different thing. All right, y'all. If there are no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. This has been awesome. I love getting questions from you guys. I'm usually the one answering, but whether you know it or not, Christine's also like all over social media watching, what people are asking about. She'll text me and be like, hey, have you reached out to this person who asked this question? And Nick is usually pretty keen on checking every now and then, checking the YouTube and stuff. So we love hearing from you guys. We love answering questions. And honestly, I really want to get these bikes to you because I can't wait to see what you do with them. Right? It's a whole new kind of bike. People are going to be doing all sorts of crazy stuff. All right, y'all. Tune in next time, I guess. I don't know when we'll do this next, but reach out in the meantime. This has been real. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See ya.